exists mostly in London, but not just in London. So Manchester has a big 7+ area as well. And there are other sort of pockets of the country that have it. But if you are London or teaching in London, it's massive. And it's for selective entry into year 3 of private schools. The 8+ is similar, selective entry into year 4. 8+ is a tiny market. It's very niche to just a few schools, whereas 7+ is quite large. And it is basically used in lots of schools around the country where it's not called 7+, but basically it's a selective entrance exam into year 3. They might just call it a selective entrance exam. Slide, please, John. So 7+ and 8+ exams primarily test maths and English. A lot of schools will also do a reasoning paper. It's often either just nonverbal or verbal. Some schools do both. And there are 2 stages to the exam. Here is an example from a couple of schools of first stage exams where they go in and they'll sit a test for 45 minutes in verbal reasoning and spelling, a break, then English listening and dictation, a break. Then they'll have reading comprehension and nonverbal reasoning, a break, and then they might have mental and written maths. This is one particular school. Another school might just do English comprehension, a shorter one, creative writing, maths, and then verbal reasoning. These are real school examples I'm using, but they do vary. And these are the areas that you'd be prepping if you were prepping for 7+. 8+ is very, very similar. The tests are usually in a written format. There are a couple of schools using online, similar to the ISEB, if you're familiar with it, format. Atom Learning is now behind the online format test, creating the online format test for one very big school, and I think is creating it for more and more schools now. So I think there may be a move to more sort of computerized forms, but at the moment it's mostly written. A few schools use multiple choice, but not that many. So we're thinking about literal handwritten exams here. The tests are very competitive, particularly in London. To give you an example, one recent year, there were 360 children sitting an exam for 22 places. In another school, there were 400 children sitting for 36 places in the first round. And then they have to go through to a second round. John, slide, please. And the second round is an assessment day where they'll have kind of a group task. Interview, yes, not in the way we think of for 11+. It's a much more informal chat. They'll do some reading aloud. They'll have some outdoor play with specific games. They're looking at how they interact together. So these are the kinds of things you'd be prepping for if you're doing 7+ or 8+. 11+ is a lot more complicated. Slide, please, John. So 11+ exams vary enormously. It's still a selective exam process for entry into year 7. Secondary school is used by both independent and state grammar schools to identify academically able children. For independent schools, most exams take place now. We're in December and early January of year 6. Grammar schools are different, and they happen in the very early part of the first term, the autumn term of year 6 generally. So they do happen at different times of year. Some actually happen a little bit later. Some of them will actually be in late January. I've even had a school that had them in early February for independent schools. So there is quite a variety in terms of the timing of when these exams actually happen. There's also quite a bit of difference in the exams between grammar and state schools. Sorry, grammar and private schools. Grammar schools are state schools, obviously, and the system still only exists in certain parts of the country, so in certain geographical areas. And in many ways, I'd say that the exams are almost more competitive than they can be for the private schools, because we have a selective school that is academic but is free. So those parents who live in an area with grammar schools, they may have their children even at private schools all the way through primary, but then actually want to go into grammar for obvious reasons, for saving money. So thinking that it's a state exam doesn't necessarily mean it's an easier exam. And in fact, very interesting, I don't have the slides for it, but there was just this week, it was the Times published their league tables of schools, and the league tables are done by exit results at A-level, essentially, or if they're doing the IB, by IB. And they split them into state schools and then into private schools. But if you look at the top schools on all of these, I think Charlotte, your local school, was top. Charlotte teaches in a grammar school area, and I think it was Wallington was the #1 state school.
Wilson's, which is in Wallington.
Wilson, sorry.
I think Wallington Grammar was there as well.
Was up Wilson, there. It was up there, yeah, quite high. Yeah, Wilson, sorry, was the #1 state school in the entire country. And this is a grammar school that Charlotte preps for. The private schools were the usual suspects, both of them based in London, and that's often how it is. So my point being, because it's grammar, it's not any easier to get into. It's just different. It's a different exam, and I'll go through that in a minute. So with the grammar schools, they use exam boards. So they use GL or CEM or other boards, though that's changing a little bit at the moment. And the children sit one exam for the entire area. So if they are sitting for Kent, they are sitting one exam for any of the grammar schools in Kent that they are applying to. So unlike the private schools, they only have to sit the one exam, which is, I think, a benefit. And that exam is the same one sat by every single child in that area who is sitting for these exams, and it is set by the exam board that area has chosen. However, and there's always a however, it's never straightforward. Because in some areas it's so competitive to get into these schools, one exam doesn't do it. They can't just sit that first exam. So to give you an example, one year for the Latimer School, there were 2,600 applicants for 190 places. The pass mark margins on that first exam were so tiny. The pass mark was 218.5 as a score, but there were 22 students who got marks between 218 and 218.5, and 22 students who got marks between 218.5 and 219. So you can see it's an impossibility for them to actually select based on that first exam. It is a math. I'm not great at maths. I think it's a mathematical impossibility. So they have to have a second stage. Those schools do have a second stage. And those schools often have a second stage that is more like the private school exams, a whole separate written paper with open answer questions and stuff that wasn't on that first stage. So this is not true across the country, but just be aware that this is true for those top, when you look at those league tables, those top schools, they cannot select based on this single fill in the dot written exam. So there is a second stage of some kind for those schools. So you have to look into that. Private schools set their own entrance exams. They can do whatever they want. It's a different process for any of them. It can be multiple choice, like the grammar school exams. It can be written open answer. There are additional differences to be aware of between schools that take in at 11 plus and those that have to sit the 11 plus, but actually go in at 13 plus, which is a very old boys' school system that still exists for some schools, where they have this kind of middle school that they go through till 13 and then they move to the senior school. There's the ISEB pre-test, which is the online format test that many people are familiar with. So my point in all this is not actually to educate you on all these different types of exams, but just to show you the enormous variety that there is. So when we hear that word 11 plus, it's kind of meaningless. All it means is selective entry into year 7. That's the definition of 11 plus. Beyond that, it tells you nothing. You have to really do your research as to what schools, where, are they grammar, are they private, what is their process, what does their exam look like? Because it's just saying 11 plus is a catch-all term for everything, basically. So you've really got to know the differences. Okay, but slide, please, John. Remember that despite all these differences, they're actually assessing the same thing. We go back to our fundamentals here. They are assessing reading comprehension, writing composition, I'll come back to that in a minute, math, spelling, grammar, and of course VR and NVR, which is not on that list. So why did I say I'll come back to that in a minute for writing composition? Not all schools assess it. Grammar schools mostly don't. Except the ones that do. And the ones that do, I believe, Charlotte, is it your area that has the one, or is it Kent? I'm thinking it's Kent, isn't it, that has the... Is it your area, Charlotte, that has the writing composition for the grammar school, but they don't use it unless there's an appeal, or is it Kent I'm thinking?
No, we have to do writing as part in the second stage. We have 2 stages in the second. So we have
and it's in the second.
Yeah. compulsory if you get through.
Lovely, thank you. And I think in Kent, then it must be the one I'm thinking of, has them all do the writing as the first stage, but it's not marked and it's only used on appeal. So there's all kinds of variations. Writing composition will form part of most school exams, unless you're in a grammar school area that doesn't have a second stage, in which case it won't. But almost all other schools in one stage will have it. So you can't forget it. So you are teaching English. You are teaching maths, right? This is what you're actually teaching. And this is where our discussion starts to get a little bit more interesting. When we start to think about what you actually need to do to support a student for entrance exams, is it actually different to any other type of tuition? And I would say yes, there is a difference. And one of the main differences is that this is high stakes tuition. But so is GCSE. So is A level. So is IB. Anything else that has an exam at the end of it is high stakes tuition. So in that sense, entrance exam tuition isn't very different from any other high stakes tuition. Is it different from regular support of a student when you're doing that kind of tuition? In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. You're teaching the same things. You're teaching math, you're teaching English. High emphasis on spelling and grammar, but you would do that anyway. The big difference would be if you are tutoring in a state school for state school children currently, and you've never done private school, you will not have ever tutored for reasoning, verbal reasoning and non-verbal reasoning, because it doesn't form part of our national curriculum. Nobody's ever going to ask for support for that, unless they're taking one of these exams. And that's where the key difference will be. So something that you may never have taught before in school or in any other way would be the reasoning side of it. So that's going to be the biggest difference. John, slide, please. So what is your role as a tutor for these exams? And this is what I want to really think about now and delve into. One of the things that drives me crazy is people who think that entrance exam tuition is just about going through papers, and it's not. And I'll come on to that in detail in a bit. But so for the child that you're supporting, your role is, first of all, to really know the content of the exams. So you're going to research and understand the content fully for the schools that you are going to be supporting students to get into. That's a really big part of being an entrance exam tutor that wouldn't be there for any other kind of tuition, because, or not any other kind, you would do for GCSE or A level, but if you're just doing kind of support, you wouldn't have that element. You need to do a lot of research to make sure you know what that child is going to come up against in the exams. And then you're going to teach them the skills. You're going to teach them English. You're going to teach them math. You may have to teach them reasoning as well. You know, I want to really think about that. We're all teachers here, and teaching for entrance exams is still teaching. It's not special maths. It's not special English. You are teaching core knowledge and skills here. You are teaching maths and English. Then you need to think about exam technique. So that's a little bit of difference to regular tuition. You can have taught all of the knowledge. You can have taught them everything they need to know. They can be really good at their maths and English. But if they haven't been taught how to take the exam, they're going to lose points. And every exam looks different. The format of it, the way that they need to answer questions is different. The focus is different. So this is an important part in this kind of tuition, is preparing them with that exam technique. And finally, for the students, supporting mental health, particularly at 11 plus, and I certainly come across it at 7 plus. I'm a 7 plus specialist as well, and I have to deal with mental health with my very young 6 and 7 year olds. But at 11 plus, they're much more aware of what's at stake. And that's where you really have to step in and help balance the pressure that they have to succeed, that is coming from home, coming from school, coming from within them. You have to advocate for that child to the parents, and you have to be alert for those signs of stress and deal with them as part of your job. It is definitely a part of an entrance exam tutor's job to be supporting that mental health side. You cannot ignore that. And then the parents. So you might think, hang on a minute, I'm not teaching the parents. No, you're not. But they're going to come into this. You're going to be supporting them. So more so with your youngest. I mean, you know, when I have very young students, the parents are actively involved with my 5 and 6 year olds in sessions and everything. But even with your 11 plus, you are still going to be supporting the parents. So you need to be knowledgeable. They're going to come to you as the expert. And ask you questions. So you've got to be knowledgeable about the exams and the process and be able to support them with that information that they're looking for. Also, they might ask you for additional resources. So you'll obviously be providing resources as part of your tuition, but they might come and ask you for something else, and knowing where to point them to, having that knowledge. You don't have to have the resources physically yourself, but having that knowledge of where they can go for additional resources is going to be really important. Guidance as well. So the kind of guidance that they come about is things like, you know, is this the right school for their child? Should they be taking this exam in the first place? Having that understanding of the kind of level that a child needs to get to, and guiding them in that journey is going to be part of your role with the parent. And of course, stress and reassuring them. It's you know, I'm right in the middle of this with my parents at the moment. Exams have been happening for my students in the last week and will continue to happen. And I spend a lot of my time not with the students, but reassuring the parents. You know, it's a stressful time. And in the same way as we're supporting the mental health of the students, we've got to be thinking about the parents and providing them that reassurance. That doesn't mean giving them any false assurances or guarantees, because you can't do that, because nobody knows. It doesn't matter how good your student is, nobody can give that sort of guarantee, but to just reassure them that you have done and they have done what they can. And stress is contagious. When the parents are feeling stressed, the children pick up on it. So by reassuring the parent, you are actually supporting the child. You know, we have the child at the heart of everything we do. So all of these things I'm suggesting you're doing for the parent is not because the parent is your client. They are, and you should therefore be supporting them, but it's because it feeds back into your support of the child, who we are thinking about at all times. So every bit of support you're giving those parents removes that level of stress that then falls onto the child. Okay, so I'd love to just have a moment. I think I want the next slide, John, but I'm not 100% sure. Yes, I do. So we don't need to go into breakout rooms because there aren't that many of us here, but we can turn microphones on and talk for this bit. Which part of all of that do you think is the most important role? If we had to rank them in your role as a tutor, what would you put at the top? So you can just switch your mics on and speak. There aren't that many of us in here, so, or type in the chat box. Mental health of the child. Okay, so do you want to expand on that? And no. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, there we go. I just couldn't work out how to. I don't use Google Meet very often, so I couldn't work out how to turn my microphone off. It's terrible. Yeah, I just think that, you know, if a child's stressed, then it's not in a good position to learn and move forward, and just won't perform. The children won't perform at their best if they've got any sort of signs of stress or worry or anxiety, and it's just such a big thing at the moment in the news as well. So yes, that's what I would put really at the top, because you can't build on anything unless you've got that foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we teach if the child is stressed? Can they learn if they are stressed? No. I mean, I agree. I think if we look at the sort of whole package and the holistic nature of our tuition, we're going to get better results for sure if we do that. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything? Charlotte, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think it is the balance of both. Like you said, Jen, you've got to have them in a good place, but there's got to be the rigor. So I think it is that balance of constantly making sure you're getting the rigorous nature of what they've got to get through, because it is so demanding, but in a way that balances their mental health and keeps them on the right side of it, so that their brain and their emotions are open to learning. So it's a difficult balance of both, I'd say.
Do you think that I was asking a fair question? Can we actually rank this? Because I would say no. I would say that all of those are an important part of your role. And I don't know that we can ever kind of, I think it's more fluid than that. We're supporting one area, supporting another, supporting another, kind of constantly moving around. And I don't think we can say, this is your role. But what we cannot do is forget any one part of that. Because as soon as I think of it like, Jenga, if you pull out too many of those, the whole thing will collapse. So you need all those supporting bricks in place. Otherwise, it is going to fall apart, and it will fall apart quite spectacularly, not just in terms of results on the exams, but in terms of everybody's mental health along with it.
That as well.
Yeah.
Is, I think one of the biggest shocks I got, I mean, obviously as a teacher, I used to talk to parents every day, especially if I went out into the playground, you're dismissing the kids. I think it's a very different way of working with parents in this environment, and there's a lot more support that they need than I remember in a classroom. It's very different. It's more intense, and I find the parents a lot more stressed out than they were in school. They still had worries in school and had a wide variety of issues to deal with, but I find working with the parents in this environment incredibly intense.
Yeah, absolutely, it is, without a doubt. And that's why I sort of said at the beginning, am I going to convince everybody, or do I want to convince everyone to be an entrance exam tutor? No, I'm not going to, and I'm not trying to, because it isn't for everybody. I find it incredibly rewarding, as well as intense. So for me, the two sides balance each other really, really well. So it's kind of for me, it's a good balance, and I really enjoy that. But it's not necessarily for everybody. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about what good entrance exam tuition looks like. So this is not about your role specifically, but about actually what to do. Could I have a slide, please? I think this is the key area that we really need to think about. So, oh no, go back. You did 2 slides. I think, or did I do 2 slides? I don't know. Oh God, I've lost track. I can't do my own slides. So,
I did 2
right,
slides,
okay,
and then I went back one.
We'll stay on that slide, and then I'll have the other one in a minute. Okay, so what does good entrance exam tuition look like? How do you bring value to entrance exam tuition? Because anybody can say they're an entrance exam tutor. So you can, I'm a primary teacher. I'll be an entrance exam tutor. Great. So, and just start teaching. But it's high stakes and intense, as we talked about. And parents are willing to pay a premium for that. And they do pay a premium for that. But in return, you have to add value. You have to do things that they are not going to be able to do at home. Otherwise, what's the point? They can just get some practice papers and go through workbooks with their own child. And why are they paying you to do that? So to bring value, you need to be bringing something unique, something special to the sessions. So the first thing to keep in mind is that there's no single way to teach for entrance exams. I'm not about to sit here and say this is how you should do it. We all teach differently, and thank God we do, because that's what's needed for children out there. But there are some key principles to follow. Slide, please. I think I've got that right now. Okay, so first principle to think about is you are teaching the fundamentals. You are teaching English. You are teaching maths. You are teaching the national curriculum, right? This is not special English. This is not special maths. You need to obviously be clear on what elements of it are needed for the exams that you're prepping for. And that's going to vary a little bit, as we said. But essentially, you're teaching English and maths in a logical and clear order, where you're continually assessing against criteria for success and adjusting your sessions accordingly. This shouldn't be a surprise. This is how we teach. This is how you teach in school. This is how you teach anything. So this is no different, okay? This is not special in any way. So if you are just going through practice papers, you're not doing this. If you are just kind of turning up to a session and going, okay, we'll do a bit of this today without any thinking about it, you're not doing this, because you need to actually know what the end result is and teach all of the knowledge to get there. So that brings us to point 2 on here, which is you have to plan. Nobody likes that word, especially if you're in a classroom at one point, but there is a lot of content to cover in a fixed timeline. That timeline is going to vary on when the student starts with you, but it is fixed. It has an end date. There is an exam at the end of it, and you can't keep going after that. Everything has to be covered in that time. So whenever your student starts with you, you will need to have mapped out the knowledge and skills that need covering. So going back to the teaching of the fundamentals in point 1 there, you need to actually map that out. Don't leave it to chance. That's going to be a disaster. Work out how many sessions you have with a student, make a plan, prioritize what to cover. If you think your time is short, which happens to us, you know, we don't always get the optimal amount of time with students, particularly if you're not teaching group classes that start at a particular time. You have a student who comes to you, that's how much time you have, right? So you know, you may not be able to cover everything. You may need to prioritize what you are going to cover, and you map it out, okay? And then we teach it. So step number 3 is the actual teaching, but it's not about workbooks and practice papers, because you're not bringing any value added, and you're not differentiating for that child either on what they know or don't know and need work on. There's nothing less engaging than sitting in a session and going through endless papers and workbooks with a student. And the parents can do that. These workbooks come with answers, and many of them now, not many of them, but there are ones that come with entire tutorials. So Exam Papers Plus have moved into this now, where they are providing at high expense, but they are providing for the parents who download their papers full explanations as to why the answers are right or wrong. So that's out there. So that's not adding any value if we just go through endless papers. And by the way, you'll bore your student to death. Can you imagine a year of just doing practice papers? I mean, they're going to have tuned out by, you know, month 2, and you'll have lost them. So yes, you do need to bring papers into sessions closer to exam time, because that's part of that getting them ready for the exam technique. But the rest of your time should actually be spent teaching in a fun and engaging way, not with workbooks and practice papers. How you do that is up to you, and I'll talk to you at the end about places you can go to get ideas and things, but you know, you're a teacher and you'll have your own style, and how you do it and how you engage your student is something that you develop yourself, but it's really important to do that. Okay, so I want to stop for a minute, and I want to think about what your perceptions of the entrance exam tuition were up to now. So maybe if you were new to this, and you've seen other people talk about entrance exam tuition, and you had kind of an idea in your head about what it looked like, or if you are already, you know, teaching in this area, is there anything that you didn't agree with or surprised you? So if you're new to it, was there anything on this that surprised you that looks different to what you thought it would be? And if you are not new to it, was there anything that you want to comment on, essentially, is what I'm asking now. No? Okay, we'll move on. So there's no single one model of entrance exam tutoring out there, okay? So, and there's not a single model of tuition of any kind, really. But what's really important is that we are constantly reflecting on our own tuition methods, and to make sure that they're effective, and that we have kind of a research-backed approach to thinking about what we do, that we haven't just kind of pulled it out the air and gone, I'm going to do this. I mean, we do that, hand on heart, I absolutely do that. I've got an idea, I'm going to try it out. So I'm not suggesting we don't ever do that. We do as teachers. We're always innovating and kind of trying things out. But that your overall plan for tuition is one that has a foundation of fact behind it, and you're not just kind of whistling in the wind. So there's no one particular one, but this is one I like that I want to show you. Slide, please, John. And I think this is almost our last slide. So this is called the INSPIRE model. You may well have come across it before. It's a framework that's used to plan effective tuition. This has got nothing to do with entrance exam tuition, but I'm going to relate it to entrance exam tuition today. So it's an acronym that stands for 7 characteristics, which are a model of behaviors that effective tutors use during sessions. And this was a research-based approach by Lepper and al. In 1997. And these are the kind of 7 behaviors that they identified that effective tutors use. So I'm going to go through each one now and talk about it. I'm sure you're all doing these things anyway, but I think it's a really good kind of chance for you to reflect. And that's what this is all about, to think, am I doing this? How am I doing this? And is it working? And that's kind of what reflection is all about in tuition. And you can reflect on this if you're not doing entrance exam tuition. You can reflect on this as a just in your regular tuition. It applies to all. Okay, so the first one is intelligent, and I laugh at that one because it makes it sound like we have to be intelligent. That's actually not what it's about at all. It refers to having subject knowledge, so specific subject-specific pedagogical, I can't speak this morning, knowledge about what you're teaching. So effective tutors have vast subject knowledge base in their specialist area. Whatever your area is, whether it's maths or English or science or whatever it is you're doing, you have that knowledge which allows you to know what problems students are most likely going to have in gaining that knowledge that they need. And that allows you to use a variety of different techniques to instruct and motivate your students in different situations. So if we relate this now to entrance exam, this means having subject knowledge in maths and or English and or reasoning, depending. I know some tutors like Charlotte just does English. I do English and maths and reasoning at 7+ and 8+, but English at 11+. There are tutors who only do maths. So you only need to know the one that you're actually doing. But whatever it is that you're actually doing, you've got to have really good subject knowledge. I've had tutors who've come to me for training and they've said that, you know, really good in English, teaching English, I feel a little bit unsure about maths, or I can do English and maths, but I've never done reasoning before because I've taught in state schools. That's fine. You need to gain that knowledge. It's not a problem. We're all intelligent people. We go out and we gain that knowledge. If you've never done reasoning before, you go out and you teach it to yourself. It's not difficult. I mean, it's not too difficult to teach it. It's difficult. It's not too difficult to teach yourself. So you go out and you get textbooks. Galore Park do some very good textbooks. Galore Park are a publisher for private schools, if you've not come across them before. They're my go-to textbooks for teachers who have never done reasoning before. They do one in nonverbal and one in verbal. These are textbooks, not the practice books. They have practice in them, but make sure you're getting the actual textbooks. And they teach you. I mean, they're actually designed for students, but it doesn't matter because you'll be a student in this case. They teach you. They say, this is one type of question. Here's how you break it down. Here's how you work it out. Now practice it here. And here are the answers. So you can become intelligent when we're looking at this model in an area of entrance exam tuition that you are not currently intelligent in. And that's fine. And I actually think if you have to teach it to yourself, it helps you teach it to a student. So if you've never done reasoning before, for instance, and you have to go through the process of learning it yourself, you will then have that intelligence of where are they going to find the problems, because that's where you found the problem. So, you know, how did you overcome that problem? You can help them overcome that problem. It doesn't have to be something that you've never done before. So even in something you're really strong in, so let's say you're really strong in English, okay, but you have a student who struggles with vocabulary, okay, but your vocabulary is very good. That is going to help you think about ways, your good subject knowledge in that area is going to help you think about 12 different ways you can help them with vocabulary. Standard method to improve vocabulary is to give out lists of words to learn. That doesn't work for a lot of students, right? Just memorizing lists of words and definitions. But an intelligent tutor, in the context of what we're talking about intelligent here, in this acronym, is going to find 7, 8, 9 other ways of helping that student to learn that vocabulary that isn't the standard way. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about intelligence. The next one, nurturant. I mean, we've talked about this just a little bit. We talked about mental health, but effective tutors spend time at the beginning of a session building rapport with their student, inquiring about their likes and dislikes, their interests inside and outside of school, you know, showing concern for what's going on in their lives, showing concern for what their mental state might be in that session, and adjusting teaching accordingly. So for entrance exam students, I think this is hugely important, more important even, and especially in the run up to exams when the stress is building. So I'd love to just take a minute to share. I do this with my students in a particular way, and I'll share that with you in a minute, but I'd love to know from any of you, how do you do that nurturant side when you are starting with the students? Anyone want to share? Same as me. Okay. I haven't said mine yet. You don't know what mine is. I'll tell you mine if you like. Charlotte, did you just turn your, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I did. Obviously doing big group tuition is slightly different. So a couple of things I do, before they start with me, they fill in an all about me sheet as their very first piece of homework. So, you know, favorite food, favorite color, hopes and dreams, you know, that kind of thing. So that's one thing I do, and I refer to that. And then with my face-to-face groups, I'm able to go out into the waiting area and I kind of talk to each parent and child before they come in. So that's something I can do. With my online, I let them in 5 minutes early and we all have a discussion about the week and what they've been doing. So it's not rocket science.
Thank you, Charlotte. So what I do, because I'm teaching one-to-one online, is I start, and I teach very young children as well as my 11 plus. I've got some very, very young children. The first thing I do is I ask them how their day or their week has been. And I watch their body language because I'm online, you know, you have to really pay attention to that. And I know my students so well. I can tell when something's wrong. I had just last week, logged on with a 11 plus student who was just sitting differently. She's a quiet student anyway, but there was just something that I twigged as soon as I logged on with her. And I asked her how she was, and she said sad, which is not the usual answer. And I asked her why she was sad, and her cat had died yesterday of that day, and she'd been home from school. She was so sad, she had actually stayed home from school on the day that I was teaching her. So I had to just straight away, we had to take time to talk about it. And you know, she was in tears, and then I had to obviously adjust the session around that. Now that was quite a dramatic one. I won't say that those ones happen often, but it can just be, you know, a difficult day at school or tired. My 5 and 6 year olds get very tired at end of day tutoring. We run up to exams. It's exhausting for them, and you can just see that, and you know, have to adjust accordingly. So I'm sure we all do this. I'm sure we do. I don't think there's a single tutor here who doesn't do this, but I think it's good to reflect on how you do it and to think about, you know, whether it needs adjusting. It probably doesn't, but I think it's something, or whether you could bring more of it in. I think it's something that is really front and center of all tuition, but particularly when you're doing this kind of very intense tuition that is entrance exams. Okay, the third one is Socratic. So this just refers to the fact that effective tutors use a lot of questioning in their sessions. They don't just give specific directions to their students, do this or answer this, that there's a lot of active involvement from a student that helps them retain knowledge. I'm sure that this is something that we all do. I can't imagine that this is something that we don't do. But again, if anybody wants to comment on how they do this with a student, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear an example. No? Okay, I'll give you my example then. So one of the things that I do is I teach online, and writing online is not a useful thing. Although I'm actually teaching a lot of English, you know, writing both in terms of being able to see what they're writing, but also the time wasting, and 6-year-olds take a very long time to write anything. So, you know, you can imagine our session would be gone. So everything I do is Socratic. I mean, everything I do is around discussion and active involvement from the students. So we still do writing, we still do comprehension, we still do all of this stuff, but it's done through discussion. It's done through a lot of discussion. Oh, voice dictate. What do you mean by that? Could you tell us? Because I've got absolutely no idea what that means.
Yeah, so Ilana, in things like Active Inspire, you know, the interactive whiteboard, and also PowerPoint, if I want a child who's a reluctant writer or doesn't have brilliant keyboard skills, just to use that voice dictate to generate sentences, because I just feel, and you can break it down. You can sort of chunk the sentences into phrases and clauses as well. So
wow,
just
sounds fascinating. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And then go back and just update and edit and things like that. So, yeah, all good.
Fabulous, thank you.
Did you say that was in
Charlotte,
Active
yeah.
Inspire? Or did you say that was in Voice Dictate? What app?
Oh, sorry. So there's an option in Active Inspire, which is sort of an interactive whiteboard feature that I brought away from my teaching. But there's also, if you've got Word or Google Docs or Microsoft PowerPoint, if you've got one of the updated, you've got the little microphone. It's usually the top right, and then you can click on that. And if you're using Zoom and you're sharing your screen, the child will speak, and as long as they're quite clear, their diction's quite clear, their words will appear as text. So it's sort of voice to text.
Fabulous. Thank you. I had no idea. That sounds really useful. Thank you very much. Okay, I've just looked at the time, so I'm gonna move us on quickly. Progressive is the next one. And this is about progressing your students. So effective tutors have a very clear picture of a student's level at any given point in the tuition and their level of understanding, and can choose the appropriate task and manage that task to suit their needs. And it means basically constantly assessing understanding against clear criteria. So when we're thinking about the entrance exams here, criteria for success on the exams, this shouldn't be just up here. You should have lists, you should have attainment target charts, and you are constantly assessing against those so that you are adjusting your tuition. And I know that moving out of schools, everybody wants to move away from paperwork. And I think we have a lot less paperwork, which is great. But I think that there is a clear need when you're working toward a results-driven end, a goal like in exams, that you have to be able to track progress. So the next one is indirect. So effective tutors give positive feedback rather than telling a student that they're wrong, and they avoid telling a student that they've made an error, and they ask questions to help a student kind of review their own work and find the errors. And I'm not going to pause on this one because I'm sure everybody in this room does this. I can't imagine any of us are going, "You're wrong," to our students. And I'm sure this is part of being a good teacher. But again, reflect on it, because I do think that is important. In fact, just a very quick one that I do. So at the moment, I'm marking a lot of 7+ maths practice papers and feeding them back to my students as in the exams, and I do mark them wrong. I do actually put it, because we're at that stage where we're scoring, exams are happening. So this is the point where I'm actually marking right and wrong. But as part of this indirect, I always start with, you made a really good try on this one. Can you see where you might have made a little error? So, and this is and I get them to look at it rather. So whereas I don't actually mark any X's as we go further back in tuition, it only comes in at this point. Okay, reflective, and this is what I'm telling us all to do as well, but we do it with our students. Effective tutors ask their students to reflect out loud when they've learned something, articulate their answers and ideas, and this helps us as tutors discover misconceptions, and helps us see where they are not understanding something that might not have been obvious if it was on paper. So this is another issue I have with just working on practice papers. If we give a practice paper to a student and we get it back and there's a wrong answer on the comprehension, how do we know why they got that answer wrong? It's especially true for multiple choice, but it's true for open answer as well. So, if I see that there's a wrong answer, how do I know if the reason it's wrong is they didn't understand the passage they were reading, or they understood the passage but not what the question was asking them for, or they understood the text and the question but they, on an open answer response, didn't know how to put that into words? And there are 1,200 other combinations of misunderstanding those were just 3 very quick ones. It's not enough to see an answer on paper. We need to actually have that talk, that reflective moment with them, so that we then get a really good understanding of what it is they haven't understood and can then work with them to overcome that. And then the final one, which I'm sure you're all doing, is obviously being encouraging. Effective tutors boost students' confidence, not destroy it. But we still challenge them. So we don't just give them easy things. We challenge them with carefully selective tasks and problems that are difficult but not impossible. So we're encouraging them to stretch themselves, but without making it so difficult that they can't do it. And this is another issue I have with practice papers. Exam papers plus, yes, I'm naming and shaming, put there, I mean, I use them, but I'm not naming and shaming and saying don't use them. I use exam papers plus a lot, but I name and shame this one aspect of them. They have practice papers that are so challenging for some of their exams that in their emails to parents, when they say you might want to buy these practice papers, they say that your child should be aiming to achieve 50%. And then you've got to wonder why that's not encouraging. That's not good tuition, because we are actually setting that child up to fail. Now, the fact that we may think 50% is fine for what they need to do is not going to take away from the fact that they are going to feel they failed and they have not been able to answer the vast majority of questions on here. So it is another issue I have with practice papers. So we want to create a desire in the student to demonstrate what they've learned and help them push themselves that little bit further forward each time, but while still feeling like they are achieving and working towards that goal. They know they're working towards this exam. We want them to have success in small steps on that journey. So those are my 7. They're not those are the 7 behaviors of an effective tutor that I think can be applied really well into entrance exam tuitions. Sorry, I've got to open the chat box because I just noticed those. Yes, absolutely. And you know what? 80% is kind of the magic figure. 80 to 85% is kind of the magic figure when we're thinking about practice papers and exams, as long as you're not using these ridiculous ones from Exam Papers Plus. But when we're thinking about, coming up towards exams, if they're getting 80, 85% on their practices, that's about where they kind of need to be. It's going to vary, obviously, school to school and paper to paper and what you're using and the level of difficulty. But that kind of makes sense because it gives them that sense of achievement, but they've still got areas that they can work on. And that's exactly kind of what we're talking about there. So just a quick kind of summary then is that entrance exam tuition in many ways is not different from regular tuition. And all of these principles I've just given you apply to tuition in general and teaching in general, right? Even in a classroom. But there are aspects of entrance exam tuition that mean we have to really stop and think a little bit more, do a little bit more research, do a little bit more planning, be a little bit more aware of what we're doing than we might if we were just generally supporting a child who is, just needs some after school support. Slide, please. Last slide, I think it is. Thank you. So how can I help? There are lots of ways that I can help. Some of which you may want to look at, some of which you won't. There were too many links for me to put on here, and I realized you couldn't click any of them. So they're actually all on my website. So if you go to the one link that is on there, which is my website, you will find links to everything else. But I want to just tell you about a few ways that you can get some further help. We were talking earlier about how to keep a session fun and engaging. So I've got a YouTube channel, free YouTube channel, it's linked to on there, with loads of very short videos aimed at tutors, not students, of little fun games you can use to teach. Now, games, I am huge on bringing games into sessions, but games should be teaching or reviewing or practicing something. They shouldn't be there just for the sake of a game. And all of the things that I have on the YouTube channel are to teach ideas or practice ideas that you need for entrance exams. So you'll find the link on the website to that if you're looking for kind of engaging ideas. If you want to just hear my insights, God help you, on entrance exams and teaching in general, connect with me on social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn in particular. So if you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, I do post a few times a week about entrance exam related things. I'm also on Instagram as well, so you can find that link on there. If you want more specific support, I run something, one more freebie. Many more freebies. On my website, there's a freebie page that's got loads of freebies on it. So I'll let you find that and discover it. But also, if you want to, and you haven't already, join in a Facebook group for entrance exam tutors. So this is just a group of, I think there's 550 entrance exam tutors on there at the moment who ask questions about entrance exam, anything entrance exam related. So that's a free Facebook group that again is linked to from my website. If you want more specific support, I have 2 things to offer you. One is training. So on that website, you will find subject specific training modules, how to teach comprehension for 11+ exams, how to teach writing for 11+ exams, how to teach maths. There's also for 7+ exams. So you can upskill basically in how to actually do all of this. But there's also something called the entrance exam member. Oh, I think I'm going to give up talking in a minute. The entrance exam tutors members hub, otherwise known as the hub, which is for people who are new, but it's also for people who are already entrance exam tutors. It's a support hub with 28 different videos on all aspects of entrance exam tuition. They're all listed on the website, so you can see them there. And it's a members group where you can get access to me and ask questions and things like that. So those are all the ways that you can connect with me or get further help. Yeah, I think that is it. So I'm happy to take any questions. So I don't know, I know we've run over a little because we started late, but if anybody wants to ask any questions, I'm available. I can stay and answer anything entrance exam related.
Well, first of all, I think I'd just say a big thank you to Ilana. Really, really great session and really insightful. Always interesting to listen to these sorts of sessions, because whilst I have taught entrance exam students before, there's always something new to find out about entrance exams. I mean, as soon as you start delving into the entrance exams for different schools, I mean, it's almost an endless pit of knowledge to sort of explore into, and it changes as well. What was true before the pandemic is now not quite so longer true. So if you taught someone for entrance to, I don't know, Westminster or something 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it's very much outdated.
Yeah, it's changed quite dramatically.
But no, Ilana, really, really fantastic. Really great to have you on the Spotlight series for TTA and to be able to discuss this, because it's a really, really important topic. And again, as you say, not everyone necessarily wants to be an entrance exam tutor. Some people are still in the sort of process of finding out if it's something they do want to do. But real appreciation from us, and really great to hear from you again, as always. I think I'm always very keen to hear from you, but it's great to give that opportunity to more people as well.
John, I just need to ask you, are you on holiday?
No, I have a different background because I'm in a different. I've moved around rooms and I've got the Google Meet background on. Otherwise,
I honestly genuinely thought that was real.
No. That's just Google Meet. If I move quickly, I think you can see the fuzzy edges where it's not. It's technology doing something right for once. But no, unfortunately, I'm not somewhere as sunny as what it looks like behind me. It's an illusion. No, but yeah, no, it was great, Ilana. Thanks very much. Has anyone actually got any questions to put to Ilana?
More a comment, really. I think, like you said about the changes, and I deal mainly with grammar, but I do run a kind of an offshoot for preparing for 11+ independent. And interestingly, the majority are, in my area, moving towards ISEB and their own online. So it's really had to change, especially as I do that as an online group tuition. It's really had to change the way I deliver preparation for it because of the different nature of the online. And I wondered just if that's happened to you as well, Ilana.
Yeah, so there's been massive change, and it all came about because of COVID. So when the first lockdown hit, we all had students who were preparing for exams and had no idea what was going to actually happen. And for the 11+ in particular, a number of schools that had what we call open answer written type exams moved very quickly to the ISEB because it was the only alternative that didn't require a room packed full of children all sitting. It was disaster. Some of those schools then went back. They didn't stick with it, but many of them stuck with the ISEB. Interestingly, and this is very London based, one group of, so there's something in London called the London Consortium, and it's a group of girls' schools that decided many years ago that it was insane that these girls were sitting 10 tests because it's all the same schools they were trying to get into, and they each had their own test. So they came together as a consortium and said, we will have one test just for our group, our consortium schools. Then they can then apply with that one test to whichever schools within the consortium. Now, that was always a written test, and before COVID it went to a different format but still written test. And then in COVID, it had to change and went to the ICB. And what they've done, and I think we're going to see more of this, hence I'm bringing this up as a wider issue, they then got a company, and I believe theirs is CEM, but I could be wrong. I think it's CEM, I have to check, to design their own test. So it's unique to them. But when you look at it, it essentially looks like the ICB. It's got differences to it, but it's that style. And I think what we're seeing, and certainly I had a meeting with Atom Learning recently, and they seem to intimate this without quite saying, a lot of schools, a lot of private schools are coming to them and asking them to design their computer-based entrance tests. So these are all going to look very similar. There will be slight differences, but they're going to look similar, and they're going to look similar to the ICB because that's this kind of test. And now it's filtering down. So we now have at 7+, we have Westminster under, which is, you know, one of the top boys' schools in London. It's all computerized now. So, and it's Atom Learning who have designed it. So they are doing it on iPads in a hall. So they're still sitting in a hall as they would do for a written paper, but it's all multiple choice computerized. And Atom suggested to me that they are doing this for a number of other schools around the country. And I think we are going to see a move. That said, there are a number of schools who are very firmly rejecting that and sticking with their own very different style of paper. And I think we are never going to have a system where it's all computerized, but I think there is a move in that direction from many schools.
I'm definitely, yeah, we're definitely aware of that shift happening as well. So again, that's why I say if you've done entrance exam teaching 4 or 5 years ago, just you need to stay up to date.
You have to stay up to date. I'll add that. I should have added that to my list of your role. It kind of is on there. I mean, it's on there as your role, and you need to be knowledgeable about the exams. You have to stay up to date. Having your knowledge from 5 years ago means nothing now. Every single year it changes, and the schools you're prepping for change. So you absolutely have to stay up to date. Like with any profession, you need to be on the ball and know what's going on, and that doesn't change.
And that's what we're here for.
And you'll be kept in the loop.
Yeah. That's what we're here for. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much, Ilana. If there's no other questions, I'm going to stop the recording now. Yep. And thank you to all of those who are watching this remotely from asynchronously at a different time. But yeah, thanks very much to Ilana, who's obviously been very kind to be able to to do this for us. And we look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you soon and hearing a lot of your good stories soon about what you're doing in the entrance exam world, if you are. And yeah, and hopefully if you need any further support with that, then we can help you direct you to the right place. Obviously, Ilana's given you a wealth of places to go to get more interesting ideas and insights. And yeah, hopefully we can support you all to do a really good job. Okay, thanks so much, everybody.